Today is Wednesday, March 29th. We'll tell you about the heroes who stopped a school shooter from doing more damage as lawmakers debate what, if anything, could have kept the shooting from happening. Plus, the next legal battle ahead for the subject of the Serial podcast, how people like Prince Harry and Elton John are going up against the tabloids, and a rule change meant to better protect pro football players. Those stories and more news to know in today's episode. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. Investigators are starting to piece together more details about the deadly shooting at a private grade school in Tennessee. And police say as horrible as it was, it could have been worse. Nashville's police chief told CBS News the shooter had other targets besides the school, including a local mall, and had enough firepower to do a lot more damage inside the school. But officers who responded rushed through the school to confront and kill the shooter. In fact, police released a video of surveillance and body camera footage that shows officers running toward gunshots. They opened fire, ending the attack. Investigators still don't know an exact motive. Detectives say it's possible the shooter had some resentment for having to go to that school as a child, but there was no known connection to the children or staff that were actually shot and killed. Police say the shooter was under a doctor's care for an emotional disorder, but was still apparently able to legally buy 7 guns from 5 different gun stores. 3 of those guns were used during Monday's shooting that left 3 kids and 3 adult staff members dead. Of course, as police keep investigating, the community is in mourning. A makeshift memorial is growing outside the school, full of flowers, balloons, stuffed animals, notes, and candles. More prayer vigils were held last night. On Capitol Hill, lawmakers are facing more pressure to do something to address mass shootings in America, but they still don't agree on what actually needs to be done. Once again yesterday, President Biden pleaded with Congress to take up gun reform. After many mass shootings, Biden has repeatedly asked lawmakers to ban assault weapons and toughen background checks on gun purchases. Now he says he's already done everything he can do within his powers as president. So next, he's planning on specifically calling out the lawmakers who he says are standing in the way of new laws. But some Republicans have already come out and said they don't think Biden has the right ideas. Like one Tennessee congressman said gun laws won't actually stop school shootings, and the real problem is America's mental health crisis. The National Rifle Association says the country needs to start prioritizing school security as a deterrent. Either way, political analysts say this is going to continue to be a key issue in Congress and during the upcoming election season. As Mexican border cities have seen a huge buildup of migrants waiting for opportunities to cross into the U.S., there has unfortunately been a tragedy at a detention center. 38 people died in a fire in Juarez, Mexico, just across the border from El Paso, Texas. And dozens more were hurt. Mexico's president says it started when migrants found out they were going to be deported. So in a protest, he says they placed mattresses against the bars of their detention cell and set them on fire. Now, migrant advocates say the immigration facility was over capacity and lacked ventilation. Others are questioning whether guards could have unlocked those cells. Mexican authorities say they're looking into that accusation to see if any officials need to face criminal charges. The UN Secretary General is calling for a thorough investigation. Today, world leaders are getting together in the name of democracy. The White House is hosting the Summit for Democracy with 120 countries, civil society groups, and technology groups. Notably, it will include leaders from places where rights advocates have recently brought up concerns about the state of democracy, like India, Poland, and Israel. But NATO allies like Turkey and Hungary are not on the list because their leaders have some authoritarian tendencies. And of course, it does not include the big authoritarian powers of Russia and China. Already, Russian government officials have rejected the summit, saying it's just an attempt by Americans to impose their interests on the rest of the world, even while the U.S. faces serious issues of its own. Meanwhile, rights advocates say they're happy the Biden administration is putting a spotlight on democracy, but they are skeptical too, since they say there's not much to hold countries accountable to any commitments they make there. Stay tuned. Today marks exactly 50 years since the last American combat troops left Vietnam. It's Vietnam War Veterans Day. So today's the day to pay tribute and honor the 9 million Americans who served during the Vietnam War era. Sadly, 58,000 Americans died in that war, 150,000 were hurt, and 1,700 are still listed as missing in action. The U.S. government says it's still doing everything possible to bring them home. Today, there are ceremonies and other events happening all around the country, including a big one at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. You can stream that one live online. All right, we have much more news for you still coming up, but first, a quick break for our sponsor. I have really enjoyed my experience with Green Chef. Getting all the ingredients right to my door is so convenient. The recipes are actually easy to follow. The food seems to always be delicious. And it makes me feel really accomplished to have made such a fancy and healthy meal like chicken with garlic charred rice with apricot pan sauce and roasted almonds. Plus, you're getting premium sustainable food. For example, 100% of Green Chef's seafood meets the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch rankings of certified best choice or good alternative. Whether you go with their premium proteins or only their seasonal organic produce, your box will help to reduce food waste. Yep, with Green Chef, you're reducing food waste by up to 38% versus grocery shopping. And get this, Green Chef is the only meal kit that is both carbon and plastic offset. Do note that Green Chef is now owned by HelloFresh, so I love that my listeners can now enjoy both brands at a discount. Go to greenchef.com/newsworthy60 and use code newsworthy60 to get 60% off plus free shipping. Again, go to greenchef.com/newsworthy60 and use that code newsworthy60 to get 60% off plus free shipping. For the 7th month in a row, home prices dropped in the U.S. This time, the National Home Price Index fell 5.6% as compared to 1 month earlier. Reports say it's happening because higher mortgage rates have kept home buyers out of the market. And with that, home prices have had to drop to get people interested again. The housing market is a little different everywhere, but all of the 20 biggest markets posted declines. When you compare prices to last year, the cities seeing the biggest drops are on the West Coast. We're talking San Francisco, San Diego, Seattle, and Portland, Oregon. Whereas homes are getting more expensive on the East Coast in places like Tampa, Miami, and Atlanta. So all that said, is now a good time to buy a home? Well, some top economists suggest waiting just a little longer since they do expect prices to drop more in about 6 months. But of course, you can never know for sure. The founder and former CEO of the failed cryptocurrency platform FTX is now facing a new criminal charge. Federal prosecutors say Sam Bankman-Fried bribed Chinese government officials so he could access more than $1 billion in frozen cryptocurrency. The country's law enforcement had frozen those funds as part of a continuing investigation. But prosecutors say after SBF authorized a multi-million-dollar bribe, those accounts were unfrozen. So a new indictment charges SBF with violating American anti-corruption law. That's on top of several other charges he already faces, like the ones that accuse him of cheating customers and lenders out of billions of dollars. SBF has pleaded not guilty to at least some of the charges so far, but as of this morning, SBF and his lawyers have not responded to these latest developments. It's another twist in a murder case made famous from the hit podcast Serial. Adnan Syed just had his conviction reinstated. So in other words, he's once again considered a convicted felon, at least for now. You may remember he served 22 years in prison for killing his ex-girlfriend, Hae Min Lee, back in 1999. That was until his conviction was thrown out 6 months ago and he became a free man. Well, Lee's brother says he wasn't given enough notice to go to the hearing that led to Syed's release. So a Maryland appeals court restored Syed's conviction and life sentence and ordered a new hearing with the victim's family there. For Syed, that means another hearing to decide whether he should actually remain free or have to go back to prison. But for now, he'll be able to stay out of jail for at least the next couple of months ahead of that hearing, and his lawyers do plan to appeal. Well, this week, some of Britain's biggest celebrities have been testifying in court against a UK tabloid. Prince Harry, Elton John, and 5 other high-profile people are suing the publisher of the Daily Mail newspaper. They say the people from the company, Associated Newspapers, broke a lot of laws for the sake of a scandalous story, like breaking into private property, hiring private investigators to bug homes and cars, and recording private conversations. The celebrities say the tabloid was getting things like financial, travel, and medical information, and that it was all covered up since the paper would just attribute articles to friends, sources, or insiders instead of its own spying. These allegations are mostly from 1993 to 2011. The publisher says the claims are preposterous and too old to be brought. Plus, lawyers for Associated Newspapers say the suit should be thrown out since it relies on information turned over in a separate case that they say was supposed to be confidential. The hearing is expected to wrap up tomorrow. The NFL approved some new rules for the 2023 football season. For starters, the league decided to make the penalty for tripping a personal foul. Plus, it will expand the use of guardian caps. Those are padded coverings that go on the outside of regular NFL helmets, meant to help better prevent head injuries. Already, certain position players tried them out last preseason. Now they'll show up in full contact practices, and they'll be worn by even more players. Another change you might notice this year, players can start using 0 as a jersey number. Jaguars receiver Calvin Ridley became the first to claim the new number 0, but others have already hinted that they want to make the change too. That's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Work Wednesday, when we break down one interesting career or work-related news story every Wednesday. But first, a quick break. Okay, now back to Work Wednesday. The new CEO of Starbucks is trying out a new leadership strategy. Laxman Narasimhan says he's going to be sporting the green apron and will work alongside baristas in Starbucks cafes once a month, and he expects his senior leaders to do the same. Narasimhan already went through training as he prepared to succeed Howard Schultz as CEO, and now that he's taken the helm, he says he's already realized the company needs to improve the experience for employees. It comes as Starbucks faces some worker backlash. Just last week, employees at 100 Starbucks cafes went on strike to demand higher wages, among other things. Now, not everyone is impressed with the new CEO's gesture. An organizer at the chain's first unionized store in Buffalo, New York, told the Washington Post what workers really need is for him to negotiate with them in good faith. As she put it, quote, "We don't need executives to make drinks. We need them to respect our legal right to organize a union and have a real voice in the company." Still, no matter what the reaction is, it's a pretty unusual move for the CEO of a large corporation like Starbucks to work alongside rank-and-file employees. A 2018 study from Harvard Business School did find CEOs spend, on average, just 6% of their time with frontline workers. The authors of that study said, with that, CEOs face a real risk of operating in a bubble and never seeing the actual world their workers face. So they suggested doing exactly what Starbucks' new CEO is doing. We'll see how it turns out. Well, thank you for joining us as part of your daily routine and for supporting us by sharing the show or becoming a Newsworthy Insider, which gives you access to ad-free episodes. All right, we'll catch you up on more news to know tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.